All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are going deep on The Conjuring.
Ooh, good choice.
Viewers have been requesting this one for ages.
Yeah, it's gotten quite the rep as a modern horror classic.
It really has, and I'm excited to, dig into what makes it tick.
Totally. What makes it stand out from, like, your typical haunted house flick?
Exactly. We're going to try to understand why so many consider it such a standout film.
I think we should start with the director.
James Wan.
Right. I mean, this is the guy who gave us Saw.
Yeah. So different, though, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But that's what's so fascinating about The Conjuring.
Well, yeah.
Like, you have Wan, this master of, pretty graphic horror, and he shifts gears completely.
To something more psychological, more suspenseful.
Exactly. He builds this dread that just seeps into you, and it's so effective.
Those early scenes in the farmhouse are a great example.
Oh, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
when the mom, Carolyn, is playing hide-and-seek with her daughters.
In broad daylight. It seems so innocent, but you can already feel the tension build.
One uses these really long takes, where the camera slowly pans across the room.
Yeah, it's like you're searching for something lurking in the shadows, even though nothing's there yet.
It's brilliant. He makes you feel like you're right there in the house with them.
And then he hits you with those close-ups.
Oh, man, those are so good.
Like when Carolyn's looking in the mirror and her reflection is distorted.
It's not a jump scare or anything, but it's so unsettling.
It makes you question what's real and what's not.
Exactly. It's like he's messing with your perception.
And you're already on edge because of the atmosphere he's created.
Oh, the atmosphere is key in this film.
Speaking of which, we have to talk about that farmhouse.
That 1970s farmhouse is practically a character in itself, isn't it?
Totally. I mean, you have your typical creaky floors, dark hallways.
Sure, but one goes beyond that.
What do you mean?
He creates this really specific lived-in feel.
It's not just a generic haunted house.
No. Notice how the furniture is all mismatched, the wallpaper's peeling.
You get the sense that this family is struggling even before the paranormal stuff starts happening.
Yeah, and it adds this layer of realism, which makes the horror even more effective.
It's like this house has a history, a weight to it.
And Wan uses that history to his advantage.
The way he frames shots, the use of light and shadow.
He makes you feel like the house itself is closing in on them.
It reminded me of The Exorcist, that sense of being trapped with something evil.
Oh, for sure. Wan definitely draws inspiration from the classics.
And you can't talk about The Conjuring without mentioning the practical effects.
Oh, those were fantastic.
That scene where the mom is pulled across the room by an unseen force.
So visceral. So real.
I mean, CGI can be great, but there's something about practical effects that just hits different.
Agreed. It makes the horror feel more immediate, more tangible.
They're not just watching pixels on a screen. You're seeing real objects move, real people react.
It adds a whole other level of believability to the scares.
Speaking of believability, we should probably address the elephant in the room.
The whole Ed and Lorraine Warren connection.
Exactly. This film is based on, or at least inspired by, a real-life case they investigated.
Which, of course, adds a whole other layer of creepiness to the whole thing.
I mean, whether you believe in their work or not, their involvement definitely adds a certain intrigue.
Right. Like, how much of what we're seeing is based on the Perron family's actual experiences?
Yeah.
And how much is Hollywood embellishment?
I was wondering the same thing.
It's hard to say for sure.
It's that ambiguity, though, that makes it so effective, don't you think?
I think so, yeah. It blurs the lines between fiction and reality.
You're left wondering what to believe, and that's when the horror really gets under your skin.
Totally. And it makes you want to learn more about the real-life case.
Which, of course, is probably what Wan and the filmmakers were hoping for.
Oh, absolutely. But even beyond the real-life connection, The Conjuring is just a well-made film.
I totally agree. It has this creepy farmhouse, this family tormented by unseen forces, and these famous paranormal investigators thrown into the mix.
It's like a recipe for a good scare.
And it definitely delivers on that front.
It does, but it also goes deeper than just scares,
What do you mean?
Well, let's talk about the performances, for example.
Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine are fantastic.
They really are. You totally buy into their relationship.
They have such great chemistry on screen.
And you can see how their contrasting approaches to the paranormal play off each other.
Lorraine's psychic sensitivity versus Ed's more skeptical, investigative nature.
It adds this layer of complexity to their dynamic.
And then you have Lily Taylor as Carolyn Perron.
Oh my God, her performance is heartbreaking.
She goes through such a horrifying transformation.
You see her go from this loving mother to someone completely possessed by this evil force.
It's hard to watch, but you can't look away.
It's a reminder that behind every haunting, There are real people suffering, real families torn apart.
And that's what sets The Conjuring apart from a lot of other horror films.
It's not just about the scares, it's about the human cost of these supernatural encounters.
And Juan really knows how to play with audience expectations when it comes to those
Oh,
scares.
yeah. He'll build up the tension, make you think something terrifying is about to happen.
And then sometimes it does, but often it doesn't.
Right. He'll use misdirection, subtle cues to keep you on the edge of your seat.
Like that scene where one of the daughters is playing with that music box.
And we keep cutting to this shadowy figure in the background.
You think something's going to jump out, but it never does.
It's so much more effective than a cheap jump scare.
It's pure psychological terror.
And it's a technique one uses throughout the film.
It's masterful. He really is a master of suspense.
Speaking of mastery, we should talk about the sound design in The Conjuring.
Oh, yeah. It's so important to the film's overall atmosphere.
It's not just about loud noises or jump scares, though those are there too.
It's the subtle stuff that gets you.
The creaks, the whispers, the distorted sounds.
Like when Lorraine is using her psychic abilities.
The sound often becomes muffled or distorted, as if we're hearing things through her senses.
It's a really clever way to immerse the audience in her experience.
And then there are the long, slow camera movements, the way Juan frames shots.
He emphasizes shadows and negative space.
It creates this feeling that something is lurking just beyond our vision.
It's true. You know, we've talked a lot about the technical aspects of the film.
Yeah, the directing, the sound design, the special effects.
But I think one of the reasons The Conjuring resonates so strongly is because it's a story about family.
Absolutely. The Perron family is at the heart of this film.
And their love for each other is what ultimately helps them survive this ordeal.
And it's not just about the parents protecting their children, it's about the siblings supporting each other.
The bond between husband and wife.
It's about how they come together in the face of unimaginable terror.
And that theme of family is mirrored in the relationship between Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Oh, totally. They're not just paranormal investigators.
They're partners in life, supporting each other through the darkness.
And their faith plays a role too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not explicitly preached, but it's clearly a source of strength for them.
A way to combat the evil they encounter.
It adds another layer of complexity to their characters.
They're not just ghost hunters. They're people of faith grappling with forces they don't fully understand.
And that struggle, that tension between the rational and the supernatural is what makes The Conjuring so compelling.
I think you're right.
It's not just a horror film.
It's a story about faith, family, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of the unknown.
And that ending, it's not your typical Hollywood happy ending.
No, it's not.
The Perron family survives, but the evil isn't completely vanquished.
It's a reminder that sometimes the darkness lingers even after the lights come on.
It's a chilling thought, but it's also a realistic one.
And I think that's what elevates The Conjuring above your average horror flick.
It's that willingness to embrace ambiguity, to leave the audience with lingering questions.
It's a film that makes you think, that stays with you long after the credits roll.
You know, we keep coming back to this idea that The Conjuring is more than just a scary movie.
It is. It works on so many different levels.
It's a film that provokes thought and discussion.
A modern classic, for sure.
Definitely. A film that demands to be analyzed and debated.
And its impact on the horror genre is undeniable.
Which is a perfect segue to our next point.
The legacy of The Conjuring.
But before we get into that, I think we need to take a step back and really appreciate what we've discussed so far.
It's been quite a journey.
We've explored Juan's masterful use of suspense and dread.
The power of practical effects.
The complexities of the characters.
The deeper themes of faith, family, and the battle against evil.
And we've only scratched the surface. There's still so much to unpack.
Especially when it comes to the film's influence on modern horror.
We'll be right back to delve into that after a quick break.
Stay tuned, don't go anywhere.
We'll be back in a flash.
We'll be right back, folks.
Don't touch that dial.
We've got lots more to talk about. So, one thing that really strikes me about The Conjuring is how Juan structures the scares.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not just about those big, in-your-face moments,
Oh, yeah. He's really good at that slow burn, building the tension.
Exactly. But he also weaves in these smaller, more subtle frights that, honestly, are even more effective sometimes.
Like, give me an example.
Okay, remember that scene with April, the youngest daughter?
Yeah, she keeps seeing that creepy figure in her room.
Right. But it's never a full-on apparition. It's just like a fleeting glimpse.
A shadow moving in the periphery.
Yeah, exactly. And because Juan has already established this atmosphere of dread.
You're already primed for it.
Right, your mind just fills in the blanks, making it way more terrifying.
He understands how our brains work, you know?
Totally. He's playing with our primal fears, that fear of the unknown.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, we have to talk about the clapping game.
Oh, man. That's one of the most unnerving elements in the whole film.
So simple, yet so effective.
It's just chilling, the idea that this malevolent spirit is using a child's game to, like, taunt the family.
And the sound design there is crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
That slow, deliberate clapping echoing through the house gives me chills just thinking about it.
It plays on our natural instinct to try and make sense of patterns.
Right. Our brains are wired to look for order and chaos.
So when we hear those rhythmic claps, we assume there's, like, a person behind it.
Or something.
Exactly. And that ambiguity is what makes it so unsettling.
We don't know what's causing those claps, what it wants.
And that uncertainty is pure fuel for fear.
You know, that brings us to a bigger point about sound design in general.
Oh, yeah. Sound is huge in this film.
It's not just the clapping, it's the way Juan uses silence, creaks, whispers, all these distorted sounds.
It creates this whole soundscape that just oozes unease.
Like, think about the scenes where Lorraine is using her psychic abilities.
Ah, yeah.
The sound often gets muffled or distorted, like we're experiencing it through her heightened senses.
Such a subtle but powerful way to immerse the audience.
And then there are the visuals, too.
Oh, yeah. Juan's a visual master.
The long, slow camera movements, the way he frames shots to emphasize shadows.
It's all very deliberate.
You always feel like something is lurking just outside the frame.
He doesn't need to show us everything to scare us.
Right, he just hints at it, plants that seed of doubt in our minds.
And our imaginations do the rest.
It's funny, you know, we've been talking a lot about the technical stuff.
Yeah, the filmmaking techniques, the scares.
But honestly, I think one reason The Conjuring hits so hard is that at its core, it's a story about family.
Oh, I totally agree.
The Perron family, their love for each other, that's what anchors the film.
It's what makes the stakes so high.
And their love is what ultimately helps them survive this whole ordeal.
It's not just about parents protecting their kids either.
Right. It's about the siblings supporting each other, the bond between husband and wife.
It's about how they come together in the face of pure terror.
And you see that same dynamic reflected in Ed and Lorraine Warren, too.
Oh, for sure. They're partners in every sense of the word.
Supporting each other through all the darkness they encounter.
And their faith plays a role as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a source of strength for them, a weapon against the evil.
It adds another layer to their characters, don't you think?
Absolutely. They're not just ghost hunters. They're people of faith wrestling with forces beyond their understanding.
And that struggle, that tension between the rational and the supernatural, it's what makes The Conjuring so gripping.
You're constantly questioning what's real, what's imagined.
And that ambiguity, that sense of unease, it lingers long after the film ends.
And then there's that ending, which is, well, not exactly a happy one.
No, not at all.
The Perron family survives, but the evil isn't completely gone.
It's a chilling thought that sometimes the darkness sticks around.
Even after the lights come on.
Exactly. And that's what sets The Conjuring apart, I think.
It's that willingness to embrace the ambiguity, to leave us with lingering questions.
It's a film that doesn't shy away from the truly unsettling aspects of the paranormal.
It's a film that stays with you, you know?
It really does. And that's the mark of a truly effective horror film.
I think we're coming to the same conclusion again.
That The Conjuring is more than just a scary movie.
Yeah. It's a film that works on multiple levels, that sparks conversations, that makes you think about bigger questions.
It's a modern classic, no doubt.
And its impact on the horror genre is undeniable.
Which is what we'll explore next.
The legacy of The Conjuring.
How it shaped the landscape of horror.
We'll dive into all of that after a quick break.
We'll be right back.
All right, so we've talked about the craft, we've talked about the themes, but what about the impact? How has The Conjuring influenced the horror landscape since it came out?
Well, you got to remember, when The Conjuring came out, horror was kind of in a weird place.
What do you mean?
Lots of torture porn, remakes, found footage stuff.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
Not that those can't be good, but it felt like the genre was getting kind of stale.
Like everything was trying to outdo the last thing in terms of gore and shock value.
Exactly. And then The Conjuring comes along and it's like, hey, remember atmosphere?
Right. It was almost like a throwback to those classic horror films.
The ones that relied on suspense and psychological terror.
Like The Exorcist, The Haunting, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it reminded audiences that you don't need buckets of blood to be scary.
And the crazy thing is, it was a huge hit.
Massive box office success.
Which, of course, led to a whole franchise of sequels and spin-offs.
But it also had a ripple effect on the genre as a whole.
So many horror films that came after The Conjuring seem to adopt a similar approach.
Yeah, like they focused on building tension slowly, using sound and visuals to create this unsettling mood.
Lots of haunted house films, demonic possession stories,
Oh, and creepy dolls. Can't forget those.
and creepy nuns. That became a whole subgenre after The Conjuring.
It's like The Conjuring gave filmmakers permission to, I don't know, be more with their scares.
To go back to the basics, the things that truly frighten us on a primal level,
The fear of the unknown, the things that go bump in the night.
the things we can't explain.
And audiences were hungry for that.
They were tired of being bludgeoned over the head with gore.
They wanted to be creeped out, to feel that sense of dread.
And The Conjuring delivered that in spades.
And it did it beautifully, too.
You're right. Juan's use of cinematography, his attention to detail.
It's all very artistic, very deliberate.
He's not just trying to scare you, he's trying to create an experience.
To pull you into that world, make you feel like you're right there with the characters.
And the fact that it's supposedly based on a true story
Oh yeah, that definitely adds to the creep factor.
makes it feel more real, more believable.
Even if you're skeptical of the Warrens and their methods.
You can't deny that their involvement adds a certain intrigue.
It taps into our fascination with the paranormal, you know?
We want to believe that there are things out there beyond our understanding.
That the world is stranger and more mysterious than we think.
And The Conjuring gives us a glimpse of that.
It doesn't shy away from the darkness, but it also offers a glimmer of hope.
The Perron family survives. The Warrens continue their work.
It's a reminder that even in the face of terror, there's still love, still strength.
So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that The Conjuring is more than just a horror film.
It's a cultural phenomenon.
One that has sparked countless conversations about fear, faith, the unknown.
A film that will continue to be discussed and debated for years to come.
And its legacy will continue to be felt within the genre, that's for sure.
No doubt about it.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Wow, time flies when you're talking about creepy stuff.
It really does. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this exploration of The Conjuring.
Hope you enjoyed the ride.
And remember, keep the lights on tonight.